Hey, discerning listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Brandan and Mary, let's watch.
Even if I got baptized, even if I married you, even if we had kids, would you finally let go of your fear of abandonment?
Now here, we often see this kind of communication, and if I were a birdie on his shoulder, I would say, it's not a choice. It's not something she can choose to do or not do. There's no willpower against this. This is years and years of therapy and recovery to get to a point where she's only having these impulses 50% of the time, and 80% of the time she has systems in place to manage it. But there will always be for her, and all, like, given the degree that I see in her, there's a chance that even with all the therapy in the world, she will exhibit the feelings and often the behaviors that we see her doing a lot right now. So for him, but it's common that people don't understand that. So he's saying, well, just stop it, right?
I need to know.
Maybe.
Truthful answer and adult-like. I'm glad she's in her adult mode, because that it will help her to be differentiated and see a path forward. What I would like it to be, if I were there, I'd be like, well, I think a better question you could ask her is she willing to work on it? And an even better way you can ask her is, Mary, would you be willing to work on this? And I just let you know, I'm here to help you with it. If you need to work with a therapist or some kind of self-help regime, I'm here to help you as well. Are you willing to work on it? That's a different kind of a question. But she's saying, I don't know, and maybe that's a very truthful answer, very self-aware answer, and a very mature answer, and an answer that is not in line with what I was worried about might happen, which is that she would exhibit more callous behavior. She hasn't had a ton of callousness, but there was at least some eclipsed empathy. But it's empathetic for her to answer this way, because it doesn't necessarily serve her to be truthful, right? It would be more self-serving and pathological for her to say, like, yeah, I'll never do it again. It's more honest and more caring to him, because she is probably thinking about the big picture of just like, well, I want to say yes, and I don't want him to leave me. Because you could absolutely imagine her in this moment thinking, this could be a deal breaker for him. And I could see it being a deal breaker for people. So she has every reason in the world to gloss over that and say, yeah, I'll work on it, or it'll never happen again. But in all likelihood, she thinks, but that's unfair to him, because when I might do it again, he'll know or think that I'm lying right now in this moment, and he doesn't deserve that. I don't want to lie to him, so I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe. And that's a good sign.
It's kind of hard to hold on to, maybe. I need something to hold on to.
Again, a little birdie on my shoulder, like, dude, let me explain psychology and trauma to you. In fact, I would even use him as an example. We would probably have, if he was a client, I would have some knowledge about his own issues and how they play out with his abandonment and his issues, right? I'd say, are you never going to engage in that behavior again for the rest of your life? Is that never going to happen? In all likelihood, it will. And it's really a notion that needs to be understood by everybody, that the issues that you emerge into adulthood with are probably going to be with you for the rest of your life. The issues that your partner has that you don't like about them, the annoying things about them, they will probably have those issues for the rest of their life. Now, that doesn't mean we're doomed and we just give up. It just means that no matter how much therapy and how much self-awareness and differentiation and systems in place you put, those issues will always at least be somewhat of a pain in all of our asses. But the work will reduce it, will mitigate some of the pain. if you have a partner that has patterns like this, but they're really working on it and they're in therapy and they've apologized a bunch of times, the next time they do it to you, it feels less painful because you know, or you suspect later on, or maybe even in this moment, they will feel bad and they will work on it. Whereas when you are being treated badly because of someone's issues and their trauma history, and there's nothing that that person is doing seemingly to correct for it, then it just feels hopeless, right? So the way that he's talking, but it's very common that people on the show will talk this way, but his tone is paternal and a little aggressive, a little talk down to her-y, which I'm seeing for the first time. And it is kind of in that direction of the codependency, the overfunctioning aspects of him. You know, the overfunctioners, there's different styles, but some of them will, in certain situations, they will exhibit what he's doing, which is a lot of care and a lot of niceness and accommodation and enabling. And then there will be other times where it will be much more pointed. Consciously, they might be thinking something differently, but unconsciously, what could be happening is this could be more solidifying her under-functioning position where she feels like, I'm ashamed of myself and I'm lesser than him. I'm broken. He's not. I'm weak. He's strong. And I don't know what to do. And it sort of, starts to polarize them in this way. And they're both enacting their pathologies in this moment.
Do what you want me to do.
I want you to trust that I can look and talk to anyone without leaving you.
Okay, so he's bringing it back. That's good, specific. She's like, I don't know what you want from me, and then he was specific, and so that's good. He's being pointed in his language. He deserves to be pointed because of the way he's been treated. I'm just a little worried about his tone. And if I were there, I would really want to honor that she just said, I don't know if I can change and maybe I'll change. Now, he could hear that and hear her just making excuses for the future, that she doesn't care and that she's just saying like, well, I don't know, maybe, like she's nonchalant about it. But I think what she was communicating was that she just doesn't know. She is lost and she doesn't have any way out of it, right?
And then find someone else.
Okay, so on one hand, it is understandable, given everything that's happened to her and in this conversation, that she would feel like he's going to leave me and I will say this sentence because I feel like he's going to leave me, and if you're going to leave me, then leave me, that kind of comment. So that's one thing. The other thing is that this is, you could argue either it's conscious or not, another manipulative control tactic, which is when he brings up something that's very reasonable. Was very specific, at least in the edit. Who knows where all these sentences were said, but in the edit, he says, I just want to be able to look around in church and turn my head and not have you think that I'm going to have sex with them and cheat on you and leave you. That's all I'm asking for. And then she says, well, then, and she's still crying. Well, then just leave me. Okay. Because either consciously or unconsciously, what that does is he doesn't want to leave her. He doesn't want to lose her. He wants to be with her. And then he's now he's in a catch-22. If he continues to assert himself, he is just going to get more of this, right? Maybe even her eventually. And maybe they've had these, because they said they fought literally every day, which doesn't surprise me, for 2.5 years while they were dating over video phone. And so she might even occasionally actually hang up on him or break up with him if he continues to assert himself and ask, I'm just asking to not be under total control by you. That's all I'm asking. And I'm guessing he's starting small. I'm guessing there's a lot of things that he wants to ask for, that he deserves to ask for. Don't lie to me, that kind of thing. And so as he does that, then she says, well, then just leave me. So he can push it, and maybe he can change his tactic a little bit, but he can assert himself, and he's like, well, but I'm going to get more of this, and maybe an escalation of it, where she will always outdo him, and he'll raise his voice, and then she'll raise, who knows. So that's one path, which isn't great. Or the other path is, I just give in and let it go.
I'll do.
And it kind of puts what she was saying earlier in a certain light when she's like, I don't know, maybe I could have been reading into that wrongly. What she might have been at least partially communicating was that she doesn't want to give up on her tactic of control. And so she's not sure if she can. And then when he follows it up with a specific, because if she really felt the way I was hoping she would feel, then when he says, I need you to stop controlling everything where I turn my head, then she would have said, well, yeah, of course you can look around. I just have this problem with being insecure. I guess I just need to reassure myself that you're not going to leave me. She didn't say that. What she said was, well, then just leave me. That if I work my way back in terms of what's in her head, so we've seen a lot of different people on the show, and I've treated a lot of people in my life, and I've experienced a lot of humans in my life outside of work. And what she is dealing with is on it's in a particular category, or at a particular high degree of trauma and difficulty that I don't think we're going to see much movement around this. Because in order to see movement, you have to have some part of her that has some stability, some ability to look at herself, and because in order for all of us to grow, especially in ways that are more long-standing in our personality, we have to be able to withstand feedback, and we have to be able to look at ourselves in a critical way, such that we can say, that's not good that I did that. That's a bad quality of my personality. Oh, I've done a lot of things to people over my life along those lines. That doesn't feel good. That's regrettable. I don't like that. We have to be able to do that. And in order to do that, we have to be able to hold on to a sense of ourselves such that we know, or very much suspect, that 97% of us is still good. We have a lot of qualities that we can remember and recall, and maybe even people can tell us, or we can just go to our inner resources because we've had those things told to us, that we're mostly a good person, but we do have these regrettable 3% issues. But if you don't have that internalized self-esteem and that sense of who you are, when you have these kinds of conversations, you just plummet into the abyss. There's nothing to hold on to. There's no possible way that you're going to be able to withstand it ego-wise. So I think we're witnessing something like that. And in order for anything to improve, that has to change. And the establishment of a self in therapy, which is pretty accelerated compared to just regular self-help, that can take, I'm not even joking, it can take 5 to 10 years, depending on how things are going. And I suspect for her, I don't know, there's some signs it might go at the 5-year end of the range. There's some signs it would go at the 10-year end of the range. And that, I'm talking like, weekly therapy and a lot of ups and downs. So until that happens, it's not likely that any of these conversations are going to have a resolution because she doesn't have anywhere to stand. She might even have a hard time determining what's fair, because in order for us to understand that, we have to have a sense of who we are. I won't bore you with all the details, but I think you get my point, that her issues are so pervasive and so primitive, meaning, they're primordial, meaning that they haven't been worked on at all. They're the sort of issues that are pre-verbal, if you will. They're so powerful and so difficult to even comprehend that they just overwhelm her on a constant basis. And until that changes, I don't think we're going to see any improvements. But I don't know, maybe not.
I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you that even in person, I feel like I'm still not good enough for your trust.
What do you want me to do? Please.
Yeah, I think she's just genuinely without foundation. She doesn't know where to go. I think she's so confused and she's so overwhelmed with the trauma and the triggering and the mindset and whatever was modeled to her in the past, that she has nowhere to stand. And these conversations are not likely to, she is struggling. We've seen struggling on the show, but so what this exhibits a little bit of is what we call disorganized or fearful attachment, where there's a lot of ways to look at it, but one of the ways that I look at it, and I don't know if I've ever heard people describe it this way, but the way that so attachment insecurity is complicated, as you know, and disorganized attachment is very complicated and is talked about on the internet pretty badly. And even professors will say things about disorganized attachment that aren't true. And even myself, I have said things, because I've been podcasting for 15 plus years. And even when I listened to episodes from many years ago that I talked about disorganized attachment, I didn't understand disorganized attachment. And so so it's complicated, but one of the ways to think about it is that you have the 4 different attachment styles. You have secure, preoccupied, avoidant or dismissive, and then disorganized or fearful. And for disorganized, so for attachment insecure people, they are more likely than not in a situation where there's an attachment threat or some kind of concern of losing someone's attachment, losing a relationship, even if it's just a small indication. They, for preoccupied folks, they tend to lean in and tend to amp up their emotions or feel more feelings, and they tend to pursue, they tend to alert, this kind of thing. Whereas for avoidant folks, they tend to distance, either in their mind or physically or by policy. I don't need anybody. And for disorganized folks, what on the internet you'll hear, and even with some professors and even with myself in the past, they will say that you're a combination of both. You're both preoccupied and avoidant. That is not the case. Disorganized is a whole other category. And I won't bore you with the details. You can listen to my deep dives if you haven't already, but for patrons. But one angle of looking at it is that disorganized folks, so for preoccupied folks, when there's an attachment threat, they have a defense. It's not a super helpful defense, but at least it's something to do. They will chase. And there will be some comfort in at least knowing that you have an option. There's behaviors you can engage in, and maybe you'll get the attachment figure back. Often in the preoccupied defense causes a lot of problems, but at least you have a path. And not that preoccupied folks can't be suffering greatly, but for the sake of what I'm saying, just go with that. And then for avoidant people, they have an option too. Think about it like in a metaphor. It's like you go to IKEA and you bring home the cabinet to put together, and you open it up and there's instructions. And for preoccupied folks, they might say, "Oh my God," and worry. And for the avoidant people, they might look at the instructions and it might be overwhelming, and they might say like, "Well, I don't need the thing," And the preoccupied person's like, "I'm going to dedicate my whole life to this cabinet." Well, for the disorganized folks, they don't have any options. They don't know what to do. They've never had a thing to do. They never developed a thing to do when they were young. That's the definition of disorganized. Disorganized, because there's no solace, there's no safety, there's no direction to safety. And so for them, they're neither preoccupied or avoidant. They might exhibit preoccupied-like behavior and avoidant-like behavior, but really what's happening on the inside is they're directionless. That's why they call it fearful, because they're often in a high state of anxiety because they don't know what to do. For preoccupied folks, they can also be very fearful, and for avoidant people, but at least there's something to do. There's an instruction manual. So with the metaphor, the disorganized folks, they bring the cabinet home, they open it up, there's no instructions. So they're just staring at it and they don't know what to do. They're just completely, fight or flight freeze response. There's like, so they can't dive into it because there's no instructions. I guess they could run away from it, so that's where the metaphor kind of breaks down. But my point is that for disorganized folks, there's nothing to do, and so they just freeze. And I see some evidence of that with her. So for that to happen, I'm guessing that the traumas go beyond the abandonment when she was 8 months old. Of course, I don't know even if my hypothesis about her personality is accurate, but at the very least, I'm seeing some elements of this panic that she goes into where she is cornered and stuck, and she has nothing to grab onto. There's so many things she could be saying right now. She could be a jerk face in 1,000 ways. She could be like, "Well, you get jealous too," or "How come you're treating me like shit right now?" Okay. Or she could be saying things that are neutral or healthy, like, "I'm just so sorry," or "I don't know what to do," or I get triggered when you look at other people and that's my fault, but I don't know. Or sometimes you do things that I think are bad, like you talk to women too long sometimes, but other times I think I'm overreacting. Or, "Well, let's not talk about it right now because I need to think on this." Or, there's just a lot of things she could be saying, and I'm only thinking of a few off the top of my head. But what we see in her is just melting down even further. She just is, just tell me what to do. And that's kind of interesting too, that she's just like, "I'm begging you, just control me. Tell me what to do. Give me direction, because I'm lost. And now that my control isn't working of you, I have nowhere to turn. There's no instructions. So tell me what to do. Do I pick up that piece and put it, just tell me what to do, because I want to be acceptable. I want to be loved." Okay, well, let's adjourn there. Tune in next time when I continue watching these two. I'm curious to see what happens, and I'm guessing you already know what happens, but maybe you're curious about seeing my reaction, or you want to be reminded, or some of you don't even watch these shows and you just watch these videos, which I find to be one of the biggest compliments I could ever get, whether you're meaning it to be such or not. And everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.